Simon van den Enkel is a young Dutch glider pilot and engineering student at Delft University. He's passionate about gliding and has his own YouTube channel called Flying Simon. He recently published a piece on gliding literature. Some books I've heard of and even read. Others were new to me. I've reached Simon in Delft, the Netherlands. So Simon, before we get into your 5 gliding book picks, tell me a little bit about yourself and your love of gliding. How'd you get into it?
I think I fell in love with aviation, I would say, when I was about 12, 13 years old. And I always had this dream of getting my PPL and flying these aircraft. But you could only do it when you were 16. So then my physics teacher actually told me that you can already start gliding once you're 14. So I immediately went to my local gliding club, and from there I think it got me, and it never left me.
So where are you now in your gliding career?
Well, I'm already flying for about 10 years now, and I'm doing a lot of cross-country flying, a lot of competition flying, and I'm actually training to do the Junior Worlds in 2021 in Czech Republic.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah.
So I saw your book picks on your YouTube channel, and I thought they were great. So let's talk about the gliding books that you recommend, and what's number 1 on your list?
I think number 1 in my list has to be Competing in Gliders, Winning with Your Mind by Brigadori, by Leo and Ricky Brigadori.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, in the video I said that they are brothers, which is a huge mistake because obviously they are father and son. But it is my absolute favorite because contrary to what some other books do, so really describing the technicalities of flying, this book is really about all the aspects of flying. And I think it triggered something in me as well. So what they explain is that in order to be a good pilot, you not only have to fly really well, you also have to have a good strategy, make sure that you are mentally prepared for the competition, but also physically prepared and eat healthy. So it really triggered something in me to get all these things in line and train in every aspect, so to say.
And these authors are from where?
Sorry?
And these
they're from Italy. They're from Italy, yeah.
Okay.
They're very well-renowned competition pilots.
And have you met them?
No, I've never met them. So unfortunately, Leo has passed away a few years ago, and Ricciardo is still flying around. So I hope to see him one day at one of the World Championships, maybe.
Now, has this book been translated into English?
Yes, it has been translated into English, but that is a small remark. I think it has been translated by an Italian guy who wasn't necessarily a glider pilot. So sometimes it's a bit difficult to get through it, but I think it adds to the fun, probably.
Okay, let's move on to number 2 on your list.
A book that really helped me is Streckensegelflug by Helmut Reichmann. So that is a book that really goes into detail on the technicalities of flight.
So, that's a very old book now too, but it still stands the test of time.
Yeah, it really does. And definitely when you're just starting to do your cross-country flights or when you want to get into competition flying, it can be really a great book just to give you the basics of centering a thermal, finding a thermal. It can definitely help. And I think it's also his book that gives you some local practices. So most of the time I would do cross-country flights, and then I feel like I was learning something, and then in these local flights, I think I was just having fun. And then Reichmann also gives you some tricks to learn even on these local flights. And I thought that was really, really useful back in the day.
Right, real, not just academic stuff, but actual practical information that you can apply to your own flying.
Yeah. He said, for example, he said every pilot has a weak turn. So maybe when you're flying locally, you should only do your weak turn. So only fly to the left or only fly to the right. Practice your final glides, for example. These small exercises you can do, and that can help you during a competition. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, number 3, or I know we're talking about 5 books, and we're not exactly putting them in a list, but what's number 3 on your chat today?
I think we should talk about the Soaring Engine then, probably. So it's I think it's one of the newer books written by G. Dale. And in that book, he describes some of the more complex systems, I would say. So it's also about the flight technicalities, but then he has these complex systems in the mountains. and he has two different volumes that explain different phenomena. And what is great is that he's using all his experience from Amerima. So he was flying in New Zealand, and he has used that experience to write the book. And it's really a fun read. And I think if you're a bit more experienced, then these complex cases can help you a lot.
So it's not an academic read that's full of facts and figures. It's actually a read that puts you in the cockpit.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it does. Which is quite nice.
And is there anything in particular, a takeaway from that series that you like?
Well, yeah, there are a lot of takeaways, but I always think there's always like small things in this literature, and I think that pretty much holds for all these books. There are many things in there that you know already. There are many things in there that you don't know, but it's what you do with the information. So you can just read it, and then it will probably leave your mind one day, but you have to fly it and then test things out and see if it actually works. So I know that there are some things in there about how a lake can sometimes trigger a thermal, and it only works if you're during a flight, see a lake, fly to it, and then actually see if the theory fits with your literature. Yeah.
Right. Putting information into practice.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of the most important parts. Because with just reading, it won't make you the best pilot ever.
Of course not. Okay, number 4.
Now let's talk about Sebastian Kawa then. So the most accomplished glider pilot of all time. He has how many glider championships? 15 or something?
I'd have to go look it up, but yes.
We're
talking
quite
pinnacle of
enormous.
gliding competition, yes.
Yes. He has the most medals of all pilots, and he wrote Sky Full of Heat. So it's sort of an autobiography, but it's really a fun read as well, I would say. So if you're just on holiday, then it's a great book to pick up. Maybe a good Christmas present as well. But I read this book, I think last summer, and I went through it in just 3 days, I think.
Now that's also translated into English?
I think he wrote it in English, I guess.
Okay.
So it's really, I would say it's also one of the more accessible books. So for the others, I think they're a bit harder to get your hands on. But this one is still quite accessible. And what it does greatly, it explains his career, sort of. So he starts with his sailing career. So apparently he sailed for about 10 years before gliding. And then he also explains about the early days. So when he had to pick a glider up sometimes one day before the competition and drive it somewhere else so that he can actually fly.
So what about that book that sticks in your mind? Is there anything in particular, a particular story or style of flying that you got from that book?
Well, I'm trying to figure out the mystery of Sebastian Kawa. So, because what I don't understand is every time I look at soaring spot during the World Championships, you always see him rise to the top, and it's always quite early. And I still don't understand how he does it. And probably even if you are the best pilot ever, then still you wouldn't win so many competitions. So he must have a trick or two or a great secret that he's the best pilot. And I'm trying to figure it out through the book. And I think that one of the things that you see is that he is really observant. So also on the training days, he tries a lot of things. And next to that, he has a lot of experience. So I think that's two things that really, really help him in his competitions.
All right. Your last pick.
Yeah. What is the last one?
I don't know. Number 5.
Oh, I know the last one. So the last one is a German book. It's called Meteorologie für Segelflieger.
See, that's why I didn't say it the first time around, because I saw the title there, but yeah.
Yeah, German is also for me it's quite hard, but indeed. So it's a German book, and I haven't actually read this myself, but we do read these. So I'm in the Dutch junior gliding team as well. Mm-hmm. And what we'd like to do during the winter is pick some books, read them, and see if we can have any interesting information from it. And there was another guy who read this book, the former junior world champion actually, and he got some real great insights from that book. So luckily he's a bit better in German than I am, but we had a quite lengthy discussion, I would say, about this book. Because one of the things that it describes is that a thermal isn't necessarily a temperature difference. So the temperature difference is only about 0.02 degrees or something. It's really a small margin. That it's more about the air that is within that thermal column. So we had a lengthy discussion, and we're still not sure. But it's interesting to see what books can do, and that they can light up a discussion in a second.
So give me the name of that book again.
So it's called Meteorologie für Segelflieger, written by Henry Bloom.
So let's hope that gets translated into English at some point so the rest of us can enjoy it, because my Dutch is okay, but my German is pretty much non-existent, so I think I'd have a hard time with that. But it sounds great. So, Simon, before I let you go on this is love talking about these 5 books. I'm sure we're going to generate some discussion on the show about this, but I've got one I'm going to recommend to you. I'm only halfway through it, but it was recommended to me by the man, Tony Furman, who did all of the weather forecasting for the Pan American Gliding Championships here in Ontario last summer. It's a book called The Weather Machine, A Journey Inside the Forecast, and it's by somebody called Andrew Blum. Halfway through it, but it's really fascinating look at the history of weather forecasting and how it was all set up, and I think there's something in there for every glider pilot, because, as we both know, weather is critical for us.
Sounds great.
So I'll send you a link to that, and I'll also put up a whole bunch of links for those other books that you mentioned up on the Facebook page for the Thermal Podcast, and then hopefully some other listeners will let me know what they think is a great gliding book that we haven't spoken about, and we'll do a little literature book review on gliding on a regular basis. So thanks again for chatting with me, and looking forward to talking to you again.
Thanks for having me.